The dust settled around Catherine Zimmerman's worn boots as she stood on the wooden porch of the Hartwell ranch house, her single carpetbag clutched in trembling hands, while Marcus Hartwell's wife pointed a damning finger at the road leading away from their property. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of trying, 3 years of prayers whispered in the dark, and it all came down to this moment in the scorching New Mexico heat of 1883, when barrenness became an unforgivable sin worthy of casting out a woman like yesterday's garbage. Catherine had traveled all the way from Pennsylvania as a mail-order bride, full of hope and dreams of building a life in Lordsburg, only to discover that love had never been part of the arrangement and that her worth was measured solely by her ability to produce an heir for a man who barely looked at her except with disappointment. "You have until sundown to be off our land," Mrs. Hartwell, Marcus's mother, declared with ice in her voice that somehow cut through the afternoon heat. "We have already sent word to a young woman in Texas who will make a proper wife. My son needs sons to inherit this ranch, not a barren woman who cannot fulfill the most basic duty of a wife." Catherine's throat tightened, but she refused to let tears fall in front of these people who had never shown her an ounce of kindness. Marcus stood behind his mother, looking anywhere but at the woman he had married 3 years ago, the woman who had cooked his meals and mended his clothes and tried desperately to be enough. He said nothing in her defense, and that silence hurt worse than any words could have. She turned without another word and walked down the porch steps, each one feeling like a descent into an abyss of uncertainty. Where would she go? She had no money of her own, no family to return to back east. Her parents had died of fever the year before she came to New Mexico, and her brother had made it clear in his last letter that he had his own family to support and could not take in a sister who had made her own choices. The road stretched before her, wavering in the heat as she walked toward town. Lordsburg was small, dusty, and unforgiving to women without means or protection. Catherine knew the options available to desperate women in frontier towns, and her stomach churned at the thought. She would find work somehow, even if it meant scrubbing floors or taking in laundry until her hands bled. The sun beat down mercilessly as she made her way along the rutted road, her carpetbag growing heavier with each step. Sweat soaked through her dress and her throat felt parched, but she had no water and no money to buy any. Pride kept her back straight, even as despair threatened to crush her spirit. She had nearly reached the edge of town when she heard the thunder of hoofbeats behind her. Catherine stepped to the side of the road, expecting someone to pass, but the rider slowed and came to a stop beside her. She looked up to find a man astride a magnificent chestnut horse, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, but his posture speaking of easy confidence in the saddle. "Afternoon, miss," he said, and when he tipped his hat back, Catherine found herself looking into the kindest eyes she had seen in years. They were a warm brown, crinkled at the corners from years of squinting into the sun, set in a weathered face that spoke of hard work and honest living. "You look like you could use some water." He dismounted in one fluid motion, pulling a canteen from his saddle and offering it to her. Catherine hesitated, years of caution warring with desperate thirst. "I promise it's just water, miss. Name is Daniel Norton. I have a small ranch about 5 miles north of town." His voice was gentle, with a slight drawl that suggested he had been in New Mexico for some time. Catherine took the canteen with shaking hands and drank gratefully, forcing herself not to gulp despite her thirst. When she handed it back, she managed to find her voice. "Thank you, Mr. Norton. I'm Catherine Zimmerman." "You are walking from the Hartwell place," he said, and it was not a question. His eyes had clearly noted the direction she had come from. "Forgive me for being direct, Mrs. Zimmerman, but are you in some kind of trouble?" The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. Catherine felt tears prick at her eyes, but blinked them back furiously. "It is Miss Zimmerman now, I suppose, or it will be once the annulment is finalized. I have been cast out for failing to provide an heir." She waited for judgment, for the look of pity or disgust that she was sure would follow such an admission. Instead, Daniel Norton's jaw tightened and anger flashed in his eyes, but it was clearly not directed at her. That is barbaric," he said flatly. "You are a human being, not livestock to be discarded for not breeding on schedule. Where are you headed?" Catherine gestured vaguely toward town. "I will find work somehow. I can cook and clean and sew. Someone must need help." Daniel was quiet for a moment, studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. She was aware of how she must look, dusty and sweating and desperate, but she lifted her chin and met his gaze steadily. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Zimmerman," he said slowly. "My ranch is small but productive. I run cattle and have been doing all the work myself since my partner moved on to California last year. I could use help with the domestic work, and I have a small cabin on the property that would be yours. I would pay fair wages, provide meals, and you would have your privacy and independence. No strings attached, and you would be free to leave whenever you wished." It sounded too good to be true, and Catherine had learned the hard way that things that sounded too good to be true usually were. "Why would you make such an offer to a stranger, Mr. Norton?" "Because I know what it is like to be cast aside by people who should have cared," he replied quietly, "and because I believe in helping when I can. I understand your caution, Miss Zimmerman. We can stop by the sheriff's office in town if you like, so someone knows where you are going. Tom Granger has been sheriff here for 10 years and can vouch for my character." The sincerity in his voice convinced her more than any flowery words could have. Catherine was out of options, and Daniel Norton was offering her a lifeline. She nodded slowly. "I would appreciate stopping by the sheriff's office, Mr. Norton, and if your offer is genuine, then I accept, with gratitude." Relief crossed his face, followed by a warm smile that transformed his weathered features. "It is genuine, I promise you. Come on, let us get you out of this sun. You can ride, and I will walk alongside." "I cannot take your horse," Catherine protested, but Daniel was already reaching for her carpet bag. "You are exhausted and have been walking in the heat. I insist." His tone was kind but firm, brooking no argument. He helped her into the saddle, his hands gentle and respectful, never lingering inappropriately. Then he took the reins and began leading the horse toward town, his long strides eating up the distance with ease. True to his word, Daniel stopped at the sheriff's office. Sheriff Granger, a grizzled man with a silver beard and sharp eyes, listened to the situation and nodded approvingly at Daniel. "You will be safe with Daniel, Miss Zimmerman," he assured her. "He is one of the most honest men I have ever met. But you have my word that I will check in on you regular-like, just to make sure everything is as it should be. If you ever need help, you come straight to me, you hear?" Catherine thanked him, feeling some of the tension leave her shoulders. Having the law aware of her situation provided a measure of security she badly needed. They left town with a few supplies Daniel insisted on purchasing, including a new dress for Catherine and some basics she would need for the cabin. She protested the expense, but he waved off her concerns. "Consider it an advance on your wages," he said easily. "Besides, a man does not ask a woman to come work for him and then not provide her with what she needs to be comfortable." The ride to the ranch took nearly 2 hours, and Catherine spent the time studying her new employer. Daniel Norton was not a young man, probably in his early 30s, with the lean, muscled build of someone who worked hard every day. His hands were calloused but clean, and he moved with the easy grace of someone comfortable in his own skin. He pointed out landmarks along the way, speaking in that gentle drawl about the land and the cattle and the challenges of ranching in New Mexico. "It is not easy work," he admitted. "The land can be unforgiving and the weather unpredictable. But there is something about this place that gets into your blood. The sky is bigger here, the stars brighter. A man can breathe out here, you know, can be himself without society's expectations crushing down on him." Catherine found herself relaxing as they rode, his easy conversation requiring little response but making her feel less alone. When they finally reached the ranch, she was surprised by what she saw. It was indeed small, with a modest main house, a barn, a corral with several horses, and a small cabin set a respectful distance away. Everything was well maintained, the fences in good repair, the buildings weathered but sturdy. "The cabin is yours," Daniel said, leading her to the smaller structure. "I cleaned it out last week, and it has a good stove, a decent bed, and a table and chairs. There's a well between the cabin and the house, so you will have fresh water. You're welcome to take meals with me in the main house, or you can cook for yourself in the cabin, whatever makes you comfortable." He opened the door, and Catherine stepped inside to find a space that was simple but clean and surprisingly cozy. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating rough wooden walls and a floor that had been recently swept. The bed was made up with clean linens, and there was even a rag rug on the floor and curtains at the windows. "It is wonderful," Catherine said softly, setting her carpet bag down. "Thank you, Mr. Norton." "Daniel," he corrected gently. "If we're going to be working together, we might as well dispense with formalities, and I will call you Catherine, if that is all right." She nodded, feeling something ease inside her chest. For the first time in hours, she felt like she might actually survive this disaster. Over the following weeks, Catherine settled into life on the ranch with a sense of relief she had not expected. Daniel was as good as his word, treating her with unfailing respect and kindness. Her duties included cooking, cleaning the main house, mending clothes, and tending a vegetable garden that Daniel helped her plant behind the cabin. In return, she received wages that Daniel paid her every week without fail, along with meals and a safe place to live. But more than that, she found something she had never had at the Hartwell Ranch: friendship. Daniel was easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor that often caught her off guard and made her laugh. He treated her as an equal, asking her opinion on things and actually listening to her answers. They fell into a comfortable routine, sharing breakfast and dinner together, while Catherine packed him a lunch to take out to the range during the day. "You know, I never realized how much I missed having someone to talk to," Daniel admitted one evening as they sat on the porch of the main house, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "A man can get lonely out here by himself, talking to cattle and horses who do not talk back." "The cattle do not talk back?" Catherine teased, surprising herself with her boldness. "I thought I heard them having quite a conversation the other day." Daniel laughed, a warm, genuine sound that made something flutter in Catherine's chest. "Well, they complain plenty, but they are not much for actual conversation." She found herself studying his profile in the fading light, noticing the strength in his jaw and the laugh lines around his eyes. Daniel Norton was handsome in a rough-hewn way, but it was his character that truly drew her. He was patient and kind, hard-working and honest, and he treated her with more respect than Marcus Hartwell ever had. The realization that she was developing feelings for Daniel hit her one morning as she watched him work with a young horse in the corral. He was patient with the skittish animal, speaking in low, soothing tones, never once losing his temper, even when the horse shied away repeatedly. This was a man who understood that trust had to be earned, that force would only create fear, and that gentleness was a strength, not a weakness. Catherine tried to push the feelings away. She had no business developing romantic notions about her employer, especially not when he had shown her nothing but proper respect. Besides, she carried the shame of her supposed barrenness, the failure that had led to her being cast out. What man would want a woman who could not give him children? But the heart, Catherine discovered, did not listen to logic. She found herself looking forward to their meals together, to the conversations that ranged from practical matters to discussions of books they had read and places they had been. Daniel was well-read, with a curiosity about the world that matched her own. He had a small collection of books in the main house, and he insisted she borrow any that caught her interest. "My mother was a school teacher back in Missouri," he told her one evening. She believed education was the great equalizer, that a person with knowledge could never be truly powerless. "She made sure I learned to read and write and cipher, and she instilled in me a love of learning that has never left me." "She sounds like a remarkable woman," Catherine said. "Do you see her often?" A shadow crossed Daniel's face. "She passed 5 years ago, pneumonia. My father had died the year before, and I think she just did not have the will to fight. They were devoted to each other, rarely spent a day apart in 40 years of marriage." "I am so sorry," Catherine said softly, reaching out to touch his hand where it rested on the table. The gesture was instinctive, an offering of comfort, but the moment her skin touched his, she felt a spark of something electric that made her breath catch. Daniel looked down at their hands, then up at her, and Catherine saw something in his eyes that made her heart race, but he did not pull away, instead turning his hand over to gently clasp hers. "Thank you," he said quietly. "It means a lot coming from you. I know you have suffered your own losses." They sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped across the table, neither one speaking, but both aware that something had shifted between them. Finally, reluctantly, Catherine withdrew her hand, and the moment passed, but its echo lingered. The summer days grew longer and hotter, and Catherine's garden flourished under her care. She took pride in providing fresh vegetables for their meals, in the tangible evidence that she could nurture life even if she could not create it within her own body. Daniel often joined her in the garden after the day's work was done, helping her weed or water, their comfortable silence more companionable than many conversations. One evening, as they worked side by side, Daniel said something that made Catherine's heart stop. "Barry, I have been thinking, Catherine. You have been here for 3 months now, and you have made this place feel like a home in a way it has not since my parents passed. I know you took this position because you had no other choice, but I hope you have come to see it as more than just a refuge. I hope you might consider staying on permanently, not as an employee, but as a partner in this ranch. I would draw up papers making you a co-owner, giving you security and a stake in the future we could build here together." Catherine sat back on her heels, staring at him in shock. "Daniel, I cannot accept such a generous offer. You barely know me. What if I prove to be a poor investment? What if something happens and you regret such a decision?" "I know everything I need to know," Daniel said firmly. "You are hardworking, honest, kind, and stronger than you give yourself credit for. These last months have been the happiest I have had in years. Catherine, not because of the clean house or the good meals, though I certainly appreciate those things, but because I have enjoyed your company, your conversation, your laughter. I like the woman you are, and I trust you. Is that not enough?" It was more than enough. It was everything. But Catherine was afraid to reach for something that seemed too good to be true. "What do people in town think of our arrangement? A man and woman living on the same property, unmarried and unchaperoned?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "I do not give a damn what people think, if you will pardon my language. I know the truth of our arrangement, and you know it, and that is all that matters. But if you are concerned about your reputation, I would offer you another solution, though I will understand completely if it is too much to ask." Catherine's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. "What solution?" "Marry me," Daniel said simply. "Not because you need protection or I need an heir, but because I have come to care for you deeply, Catherine. I think I might even love you, though I know it is too soon to say such things. But I look at you and I see a future I did not know I wanted. I see a partnership built on respect and affection and shared purpose. I see a woman who makes me want to be better than I am. If you do not feel the same, I will understand, and this partnership offer stands regardless. You will always have a home here, Catherine, in whatever capacity you choose." Tears streamed down Catherine's face, but for the first time in years they were tears of joy rather than sorrow. "I care for you too," she whispered, "more than I thought possible. But Daniel, you should know that the Hartwells cast me out because I could not conceive in 3 years of marriage. I may never be able to give you children. If you want a family, I may not be able to provide that." Daniel reached out and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks, his touch infinitely tender. "Then we will build our own family," he said firmly. "There are children in this world who need homes and love. There are people who need help and support. A family is not just about blood, Catherine. It is about who you choose to love, and who chooses to love you back. If we are blessed with children of our own, wonderful. If not, we will make a family in other ways. You are enough for me exactly as you are. Do you understand that? You are enough." Catherine launched herself into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time, and Daniel caught her and held her close, his own eyes suspiciously bright. When he tilted her face up and kissed her, it was sweet and gentle and full of promise, the kind of kiss that spoke of new beginnings and healed hearts. They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony in town, with Sheriff Granger and his wife standing as witnesses. Catherine wore a new dress in soft blue that Daniel had insisted on buying her, and she carried a bouquet of wildflowers that he had picked himself that morning. When Daniel slipped a plain gold band onto her finger and promised to love and cherish her all the days of his life, Catherine believed him with every fiber of her being. The wedding night was nothing like her previous experience of marriage. Daniel was patient and tender, taking time to learn what pleased her, to show her that intimacy could be about mutual joy rather than duty. For the first time, Catherine understood what it meant to be truly cherished, to be seen as a person rather than simply a vessel for someone else's desires. In the months that followed, Catherine blossomed in a way she never had before. With Daniel, she felt free to be herself, to express opinions and ideas without fear of censure. They worked side by side on the ranch, building something together that was theirs. Daniel consulted her on decisions about the cattle and the land, valuing her input and intelligence. In turn, Catherine took pride in making their house a home, in cooking meals they shared while discussing their days, in the quiet evenings spent reading together or simply sitting in comfortable silence. The question of children hung unspoken between them for several months, until one evening, Catherine brought it up herself. "I have been thinking about what you said, about building our own family," she began hesitantly. "Do you truly believe we could adopt children who need a home?" Daniel set down the book he had been reading and gave her his full attention. "I do. In fact, I have been thinking about it quite a bit. There's an orphanage in Santa Fe, run by the Sisters of Charity. They are always looking for good homes for children. We have room here, and love to give, and a good life to offer. If you are willing, we could write to them and inquire about the possibility." Hope unfurled in Catherine's chest like a flower opening to the sun. "You would do that? Truly? Take in children not of your blood and raise them as your own?" "Blood does not make a family, Catherine. Love does. Choice does. If I raise a child from infancy, teach them and guide them and love them, how are they any less mine than if I had contributed to their creation? The important thing is that they are wanted and loved, that they have the chance for a good life. We can give them that." Catherine threw her arms around his neck, overwhelmed with love for this man who saw the world so differently from most. "You are the best man I have ever known, Daniel Norton. I love you so much." "I love you too," he murmured against her hair, "more than I thought possible to love another person. You have made me happier than I ever dreamed of being." They wrote to the orphanage the very next day, explaining their situation and expressing their desire to adopt. The response came 6 weeks later, along with an invitation to visit and meet some of the children in their care. Catherine and Daniel made the journey to Santa Fe with a mixture of excitement and nervousness, both wondering if they were ready for the responsibility of parenthood. Sister Margaret, the nun in charge of the orphanage, was a brisk, no-nonsense woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. She led them through the building, introducing them to various children and explaining each one's circumstances. Catherine's heart broke at the stories, at the casual cruelty and misfortune that had left these young souls without families. They were about to leave when a boy of about 5 years old crashed into Daniel's legs, fleeing from an older boy who was chasing him. Daniel steadied the child automatically, and Catherine watched as the boy looked up at her husband with wide blue eyes full of mischief and fear. "I am sorry, mister," the boy said quickly. "Tommy was chasing me and I did not see where I was going." "No harm done," Daniel said gently, crouching down to the boy's level. "What is your name, son?" "Samuel, sir, but everyone calls me Sam." The boy's eyes darted back toward where his pursuer had disappeared. "I should go before Tommy finds me again." "Why was he chasing you?" Catherine asked, also kneeling down. Sam shrugged, trying to look brave even though Catherine could see the fear in his eyes. "He does not like me much, says I am trouble because I ask too many questions." Daniel and Catherine exchanged glances, and Catherine saw her own thoughts reflected in her husband's eyes. There was something about this boy, with his unruly dark hair and curious eyes, that called to both of them. "I like questions," Daniel said seriously. "Questions are how we learn about the world. A person who asks questions is smart, not trouble." Sam's face lit up with a smile that transformed his features. "Really? My pa used to say that too before he died. He said questions were good." They spent the next hour talking with Sam, learning that his father had died in a mining accident 2 years ago, and his mother had succumbed to illness 6 months later. Sam had been at the orphanage for 4 months, and it was clear that he was struggling to adjust. He was energetic and inquisitive, traits that the overwhelmed nuns were hard-pressed to manage in a building full of children. When they finally pulled themselves away to speak with Sister Margaret again, Catherine found herself fighting tears. "That boy needs a home," Daniel said quietly. "Somewhere he can run and play and ask all the questions he wants. Somewhere he can be loved for who he is rather than scolded for his energy." Sister Margaret smiled knowingly. "I thought you might connect with Samuel. He is a good boy, smart as a whip, but he needs attention and guidance that we simply cannot provide adequately here. If you are serious about adopting him, I think you would make excellent parents for him." "We are serious," Catherine said firmly, surprising herself with her certainty. "We want to give him a home." The paperwork took 3 months to finalize, 3 months during which Catherine and Daniel prepared for Sam's arrival with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. They converted a small room off the main house into a bedroom for him, and Daniel built furniture while Catherine sewed curtains and made a quilt. They wrote letters to Sam, telling him about the ranch and the horses and the wide open spaces where he could run and explore to his heart's content. The day they brought Sam home was one of the happiest of Catherine's life. The boy was initially shy, overwhelmed by the change and uncertain of his place, but Daniel's gentle patience and Catherine's warm affection slowly drew him out. Within weeks, Sam was following Daniel around the ranch like a shadow, asking endless questions about the cattle and horses and land. Daniel answered each question seriously, never dismissing the boy's curiosity, and Catherine watched their relationship deepen with a full heart. Sam took to calling them Ma and Pa within the first month, and Catherine cried the first time he did it, overwhelmed with emotion at being granted that precious title. She had thought she would never be a mother, had mourned that loss as a deep grief, but now she had this bright, curious, energetic boy who looked at her with trust and growing love. Parenthood was not always easy. Sam had nightmares sometimes, waking up crying for the parents he had lost. There were moments of stubbornness and frustration, times when the trauma of his early losses manifested in difficult behavior. But Daniel and Catherine faced each challenge together, with patience and love and determination, to give Sam the stable, loving home he deserved. A year after Sam joined their family, Catherine realized she felt different. She had been tired lately, and certain smells made her nauseous. At first, she dismissed it as nothing, but when her monthly courses failed to appear, she allowed herself a flicker of hope. The doctor in Lordsburg confirmed what she barely dared to believe. After all the years of trying and failing, after being cast out as barren, Catherine was pregnant. She was terrified to tell Daniel, afraid that this miracle might somehow change how he felt about Sam, might make their adopted son seem less important. But Daniel's reaction dispelled her fears immediately. He whooped with joy and picked her up and spun her around, laughing and crying at the same time, then immediately became concerned about whether spinning her was safe for the baby. When Catherine expressed her fears about Sam feeling displaced, Daniel shook his head firmly. "Sam is our son, period. This baby will be his brother or sister, but Sam will always be our first child, the one who made us parents. Nothing will ever change that." He proved his words that evening when they told Sam the news together. "You're going to be a big brother," Catherine said gently, watching Sam's face carefully. "In about 6 months, you will have a baby brother or sister." Sam's eyes went wide. "Really? I am going to be a brother?" Then his face fell slightly. "Does that mean you do not need me anymore, since you are going to have a real baby?" Daniel knelt down and pulled Sam into a fierce hug. "You listen to me, Sam Norton. You are our real son, you hear me? You are just as much ours as this baby will be. We did not adopt you because we could not have other children. We adopted you because we wanted you specifically, because you are smart and brave and kind, and we fell in love with you. This baby is not a replacement. You're going to be a big brother, which is an important job. Your mother and I will need your help." Sam's uncertainty melted into excitement. "I can help? I can teach the baby things?" "Absolutely," Catherine assured him, pulling him close. "You will be the best big brother in all of New Mexico." The pregnancy was not easy. Catherine suffered from sickness in the early months and exhaustion throughout, but she had never been happier. Daniel was attentive without being overbearing, and Sam was delighted to be involved, bringing her water and asking the baby questions through her swollen belly, even though it could not answer yet. When Catherine went into labor on a cold February morning in 1885, Daniel sent Sam to fetch the midwife from town and stayed by Catherine's side, holding her hand and whispering encouragement as the contractions intensified. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Catherine feared for both herself and the baby, but finally, as the sun set outside the window, she gave birth to a squalling, healthy baby boy. "We have a son," Daniel said in wonder, tears streaming down his face as the midwife placed the baby in his arms. Catherine, we have another son." When Sam was finally allowed to come in and meet his brother, his eyes went wide with awe. "He is so small," he whispered, reaching out to gently touch the baby's tiny hand. "What are we going to name him?" Catherine and Daniel had discussed names extensively. "We thought we would name him Thomas," Daniel said. "Thomas William Norton, after both of our fathers." "Thomas," Sam repeated, testing the name. "Tommy, I like it. Hi, Tommy. I'm your big brother Sam, and I'm going to teach you everything I know." The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Catherine had her hands full with an infant and a 6-year-old, but Daniel was an involved father, taking turns walking the floor with a fussy Thomas at night and continuing to make time for Sam during the day. They were determined that Sam would not feel neglected, and Sam rose to the challenge of being a big brother with enthusiasm, wanting to help with everything from diaper changes to feedings. Thomas thrived under the attention of his family, growing into a chubby, happy baby who smiled at everyone. Sam was endlessly patient with his little brother, entertaining him with silly faces and songs, and Thomas's eyes followed Sam everywhere. One evening, when Thomas was about 6 months old, Catherine stood in the doorway of the boys' room, watching Daniel tuck them both in. Sam was in his bed, already drowsy, while Daniel held Thomas and rocked him gently. "Tell us the story, Pa," Sam requested sleepily, "about how we became a family." It had become a bedtime ritual, the story of how they had all found each other. Daniel settled into the rocking chair with Thomas and began the tale in his soothing drawl. "Once upon a time, there was a cowboy who lived all alone on a ranch in New Mexico. He had everything he needed except for one thing, someone to share it all with. Then one day, he was riding to town when he saw a woman walking in the heat, and he knew right away that she was special. Her name was Catherine, and she had been cast out by people who did not appreciate how wonderful she was." "That is Ma," Sam murmured, smiling. "That is your Ma," Daniel confirmed. "The cowboy brought her to his ranch, and they became friends, and then they fell in love. And the cowboy said to Catherine, 'We will build our own family.' And Catherine said, 'Yes, let us do that together.' So they got married, and then they went looking for someone special to be part of their family." "And they found me," Sam said. "They found you," Daniel agreed. "They went to Santa Fe and met a boy with dark hair and bright eyes who asked wonderful questions and had so much love to give. And they knew right away that you were meant to be their son. So they brought you home, and you made the ranch feel complete. But then Tommy came," Sam added. "Then your Ma and I were blessed with Thomas, and our family grew. 2 sons to love and raise and watch grow up. 2 boys who will grow into good men, I have no doubt. 2 brothers who will always have each other's backs. We built our own family, Sam, just like we said we would. And it is the best family I could ever have imagined." Catherine wiped tears from her eyes as she listened. This was more than she had ever dared to dream of, back when she stood on the porch of the Hartwell Ranch with nothing but a carpetbag and broken hopes. She had a husband who loved her, 2 beautiful sons, and a home filled with laughter and warmth. As the years passed, the Norton family continued to thrive. Sam grew into a lanky, inquisitive boy who loved the ranch and had a gift for working with animals. Daniel taught him everything he knew about ranching, and Sam soaked it up like a sponge. Thomas was more reserved than his older brother, but equally bright, with a talent for numbers that delighted Catherine. The 2 boys were close despite their different temperaments, the bond between them strengthened by their parents' deliberate efforts to treat them equally and emphasize that they were both equally loved and valued. When Thomas was 3 years old, Catherine discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because she knew what to expect, and in the spring of 1888, she gave birth to a daughter they named Caroline Rose. Sam, now 9 years old, was just as enchanted with his baby sister as he had been with Thomas, and Thomas, at 3, was fascinated by the tiny person who had joined their family. The ranch prospered under Daniel's careful management and with Catherine's partnership. They expanded their cattle operation, and Daniel began breeding horses as well, developing a reputation for quality stock that attracted buyers from as far away as Texas and Arizona. Catherine's garden grew larger each year, providing not only for their own table, but surplus that she sold in town. She also took in sewing work, more for the satisfaction of having her own income than because they needed the money. Sam proved to be a natural with horses, and by the time he was 12, he was helping Daniel break and train the young stock. It filled Catherine with pride to watch her eldest son work alongside his father, the two of them moving in synchronized harmony, born of years of working together. Life was not without its challenges. There were droughts that made water scarce and grazing poor. There were illnesses and injuries, the inevitable accidents of ranch life. One year, a fire threatened their property, and they spent 3 terrifying days fighting to save their home and livelihood. But they faced each challenge together as a family, supporting each other through the difficult times and celebrating together in the good times. The town's attitude toward their family was mixed at best. Some people admired what Daniel and Catherine had built and treated Sam no differently than they treated Thomas or Caroline. Others were less accepting, making snide comments about Sam being adopted or treating him as somehow less than legitimate. It was a source of anger for Daniel and pain for Catherine, but they did their best to shield Sam from the worst of it while teaching him to hold his head high and know his own worth. One incident stood out in particular. Sam was 14 when he got into a fight in town with the son of Marcus Hartwell. The boy, a year older than Sam and considerably larger, had made a comment about Sam being a charity case and Catherine being damaged goods that had to settle for another man's leavings. Sam had apparently hit him hard enough to blacken both eyes before Sheriff Granger pulled them apart. Daniel and Catherine were summoned to town to collect their son. Marcus Hartwell was there with his wife, the woman from Texas who had replaced Catherine, and their 2 young children. Marcus looked older than his years, bitter lines around his mouth, and he glared at Sam with unconcealed contempt. "Your boy is a menace," Marcus snarled. "He should be horsewhipped for attacking my son." Daniel's jaw tightened, but his voice was calm when he spoke. "From what I understand, your son made offensive comments about my wife and son first. Sam was defending his family's honor." "Honor?" Marcus spat. "What honor does a barren woman have? She failed in her most basic duty as a wife. I should have cast her out years sooner than I did." The words hung in the air, and Catherine felt the familiar sting of shame even after all these years. But then Daniel stepped forward, and there was such cold fury in his eyes that Marcus actually took a step back. "You are a fool, Marcus Hartwell," Daniel said quietly, his voice deadly calm. "You had a good woman, a kind woman, and you threw her away because of your own inadequacy and pride. My wife has given me more happiness in 7 years than you could comprehend in a lifetime. She is the mother of my children, the partner in my success, and the love of my life. Whatever failings exist, they were yours, not hers. Now I suggest you teach your son some manners before he says something to the wrong person and gets more than just a black eye." He turned to Sheriff Granger. "Tom, if Sam was defending his family from insults, I will not punish him for that, but I will speak to him about choosing his battles more carefully. Is he free to go?" Sheriff Granger, who had witnessed the entire exchange with barely concealed satisfaction, nodded. "He is free to go, Daniel. And for what it is worth, I would have done the same in his place." On the ride home, Sam was silent, clearly expecting punishment. Instead, Daniel pulled the wagon to a stop halfway home and turned to look at his son. "What that boy said about your mother was vile and untrue," he said. "I understand why you hit him, and I will not punish you for defending her honor. But Sam, you need to understand that there will always be people who say cruel things, who try to tear others down to make themselves feel bigger. You cannot fight every one of them. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and being happy, showing them that their words cannot touch you." "He said Ma was damaged," Sam said, his voice thick with emotion. "He said I was not really your son, that I was just some orphan you took pity on. I could not just stand there and let him say those things, Pa." Daniel reached over and gripped Sam's shoulder. "You are my son in every way that matters. Do you understand that? I chose you. Your mother and I specifically wanted you. That makes you more mine than if you had simply happened by accident. As for your mother, she is the strongest woman I have ever known. What Marcus Hartwell did to her was cruel and wrong, but it led her to me, and I will be grateful for that for the rest of my life. She was never damaged. She was always perfect. She just needed someone who could see that." Catherine, sitting on the other side of Sam, put her arm around him. I am proud that you wanted to defend me, sweetheart. But your father is right. The best way to prove people like the Hartwells wrong is to be happy and successful and full of love. We have built something beautiful together, all of us. They cannot touch that. Sam nodded slowly, leaning into his mother's embrace. I love you, Ma. I love you, Pa. I would not trade our family for anything. Neither would we, Catherine said softly. Neither would we. As the years continued to pass, the Norton family remained close-knit and happy. Sam grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with Catherine's compassion and Daniel's work ethic. At 18, he was running much of the day-to-day operations of the ranch, allowing Daniel to focus more on the horse breeding program. Thomas, at 15, showed an aptitude for business and helped his mother keep the ranch's books and manage their finances. Caroline, at 12, was bright and curious, already showing signs of the beauty she would grow into, but more interested in riding and ranching than in traditional feminine pursuits. They had expanded the original cabin and built a bunkhouse for the 2 ranch hands they now employed during busy seasons. The ranch was prosperous enough that Daniel and Catherine had been able to put money away for their children's futures, whatever those might hold. One evening, as Catherine and Daniel sat on the porch watching the sunset, as they had done countless times over the years, Catherine reflected on how far they had come. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been?" she asked. "If you had not stopped to help me that day on the road?" Daniel reached over and took her hand, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on her palm. "I think about it sometimes," he admitted, "and I am grateful every single day that I was in the right place at the right time. You have made me happier than I ever thought possible, Catherine. These years with you and our children have been the best of my life." "Mine too," Catherine said softly. "I was so broken when you found me, Daniel. I thought my life was over, that I had nothing left to offer. But you saw something in me that I could not see in myself. You gave me a chance when no one else would, and you loved me even when I could not love myself. You helped me see that my worth was not defined by what I could not do, but by who I was as a person. You always had worth," Daniel said firmly. "The Hartwells were fools who could not see the treasure they had, but their loss was my gain, and I will never stop being grateful for that." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, holding hands and watching the sky turn from orange to purple to deep blue. In the distance, they could hear Sam and Thomas working with the horses, their voices carrying on the evening breeze. Caroline was in the house, practicing the piano that Daniel had surprised Catherine with for their 10th anniversary. "We really did build our own family, did not we?" Catherine said wonderingly. "In ways I never imagined when you first said those words." "The best family I could have asked for," Daniel agreed. 3 amazing children, a wife I adore, a ranch that thrives, and a life full of love and purpose. What more could a man want?" "Nothing," Catherine said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Absolutely nothing." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Catherine thought about the desperate woman she had been 10 years ago, cast out and alone with nothing but a carpetbag and a broken spirit. That woman could never have imagined this life, this happiness, this sense of belonging and purpose. She had thought her inability to conceive made her worthless, but Daniel had shown her that family was about so much more than blood. They had built their family through choice and love, through adoption and birth, through patience and hard work, and unwavering commitment to each other. Sam was no less their son than Thomas, and both boys were equally precious to them. Caroline was the unexpected blessing that had come after they had already found contentment. Together, the 5 of them were a unit, bound by love rather than obligation, by choice rather than chance. The years continued to unfold with their mixture of joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge. Sam eventually married a schoolteacher from Santa Fe, a smart, capable woman named Emma, who fit seamlessly into the Norton family. They built a house on the northern edge of the property and started their own family, giving Daniel and Catherine their first grandchildren. Thomas went to university in Albuquerque to study law, but returned to Lordsburg to set up practice, determined to stay close to his family and roots. Caroline surprised them all by becoming interested in medicine and went to train as a nurse, returning to work with the town's doctor and eventually taking over his practice when he retired. Through it all, Daniel and Catherine remained devoted to each other, their love deepening with each passing year. They grew old together, their hair turning gray, and their hands becoming gnarled with arthritis, but their affection never dimmed. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, still held hands, still found joy in each other's company after decades of marriage. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Sam made a toast that brought tears to everyone's eyes. 30 years ago, my parents taught me that family is not about blood but about love and choice. They chose me when I was a lonely, scared boy in an orphanage, and they gave me a home and a name and more love than I knew what to do with. They taught me what it means to be a good person, a good husband, a good father. Everything I am, I owe to them. So please, raise your glasses to Daniel and Catherine Norton, the best parents anyone could ask for, and proof that love can triumph over any adversity. As everyone raised their glasses and cheered, Catherine looked around at the faces of her family, children and grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren, all of them here because she and Daniel had chosen to build something together out of the ruins of her old life. She caught Daniel's eye across the room and saw her own emotions reflected there: love, gratitude, and deep satisfaction. Later, as they prepared for bed that night, Daniel pulled Catherine into his arms and held her close. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" Catherine asked, surprised. "For trusting me when I stopped on that road," Daniel said. "For agreeing to come with me when you had no reason to trust any man. For building this life with me. For being my partner in all things. For giving me a family and a purpose and more happiness than any one man deserves. For being you, Catherine. Just for being you." Catherine felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I should be thanking you," she said. "You saved me, Daniel, not just from the situation I was in, but from myself. You showed me that I had value beyond what society said I should be. You loved me when I could not love myself. You built me up instead of tearing me down. You gave me everything I had lost hope of ever having." "We saved each other," Daniel said firmly. "And we built something beautiful together. I would not change a single thing, Catherine. Not one single moment, because it all led us here, to this life, to this family. I love you more now than I did the day I married you, and I loved you tremendously even then." "I love you too," Catherine whispered, "more than words can express. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Daniel Norton. My unexpected blessing, my greatest love, my true partner." They held each other in the quiet darkness, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that exceeded either of their wildest dreams. Outside, the New Mexico sky blazed with stars, the same stars that had looked down on them that first day when Daniel stopped to help a desperate woman on a dusty road. The years had brought changes, as years always did. Their bodies aged and their energy waned, but their love remained constant, a steady flame that warmed them both and illuminated the lives of everyone around them. Sam's eldest son began taking over more of the ranch operations, ensuring that the Norton legacy would continue into another generation. Thomas's children showed signs of following in their father's footsteps into law and public service. Caroline's daughter was already talking about becoming a doctor. When Daniel passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, Catherine mourned him deeply, but also celebrated the incredible life they had shared. She lived another 5 years, surrounded by the family they had built together, and when she finally closed her eyes for the last time, it was with a smile on her face and Daniel's name on her lips. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, their graves marked with simple headstones that bore the names of their children, biological and adopted, a testament to the family they had built from nothing but love and determination. Sam ensured that the graves were always tended, flowers always fresh, and he told his grandchildren the story of how his parents had met, how they had chosen each other and built something extraordinary out of circumstances that should have crushed them both. The Norton Ranch continued to thrive for generations, passed down through the family as a symbol of what could be achieved when people chose love over convention, inclusion over exclusion, hope over despair. The story of Daniel and Catherine became a family legend, told and retold, a reminder that family was defined not by blood, but by the bonds people chose to forge with each other. And somewhere in the vast New Mexico sky, under the same stars that had witnessed their meeting so many years ago, two souls reunited, their love transcending death itself, just as it had once transcended society's narrow definitions of worth and family. They had built their own family against all odds, and in doing so, they had created a legacy that would endure long after they were gone, a testament to the transformative power of love, acceptance, and the simple act of reaching out to help someone in need. The cowboy had kept his promise to the mail-order bride who had been thrown out for not conceiving. Together, they had built their own family, one infinitely richer and more beautiful than either could have imagined. And in the end, that was all that mattered. They had loved deeply, built something lasting, and left the world better than they found it. What greater legacy could anyone hope for than that?